Hey friends, well welcome to Q on Q. It is episode 98 and part 3 of our all-new series on the seasons in our lives. If you've been walking with me through this series so far, we've already spent time in two very different seasons. We started in winter, that quiet, often uncomfortable season of waiting and unseen growth. You know, where we live, it has felt an awful lot like winter lately. I know it's almost winter on the calendar, but we had quite a bit of snow and some very cold temperatures in the last few days. And it's supposed to get warmer here in the next few days, but winter has sure made its presence known. And with my back issues, I cannot shovel. So I'm so grateful to my wife who has taken the reins on this, all the cleanup outside, and she has taken care of getting all of our cars dug out and sidewalks cleared off. You know, I can't help think if all of the snow had fallen on a weekday, I'm sure we would probably have had a snow day from school. Well, that was the first episode. Then we stepped into spring in the second episode. Spring is the season of renewal, movement, and forward momentum where new life begins to emerge and we feel God stirring us to move again. Well, today we arrive in summer. Summer is the season of abundance. Summer is where growth becomes visible, where things feel fuller and more established, and really where the work of the previous seasons begins to bear fruit. Summer is a time of joy, especially for those who are in school or teach school or have a job when the summers are available, because it's a joy to have a little bit of break in the summer months. Summer's also, though, a season of productivity. It's a season of confidence. But it's a season that really requires attentiveness. Let me explain. Summer invites us not only to enjoy what has grown, but to steward it as well. Today we're going to talk about how to recognize abundance in your life, how to stay rooted and grateful when things are going well, and how to live fully in a season where God's blessings aren't hidden, but clearly on display. Summer is a season where all that has been nurtured in these months before begins to flourish. It's the visible result of patient roots and quiet preparation. It's where the faithful tending of the months and months leading up to it come to fruition. We can relate this to some obvious things in our lives, like spring plants we put in the ground that first start to bloom, or trees now getting full. But in life, this can show up in many things, like creative projects taking shape, or relationships growing deeper, or personal confidence returning, or even goals that once felt distant suddenly coming within reach. Unlike spring, where growth is tentative and fragile, summer carries a sense of things being solid. You know, the energy, momentum, and fruit of effort becomes tangible. Abundance in summer is not limited to success or productivity. It's also the quiet satisfaction of being fully engaged in life, feeling the richness of ordinary moments and noticing blessings that you may have overlooked before. A warm conversation with a friend, the satisfaction of a completed task, the simple joy of a morning routine done with attention. All of these things are expressions of abundance. And summer reminds us that flourishing can be both external and internal. It can also be both visible and deeply personal. One of the most beautiful aspects of summer is that it calls for awareness. When life feels full, it's easy to take things for granted. Abundance can become invisible if we stop noticing it, or worse, if we begin to expect it as a right rather than a gift. This season invites us to pause, reflect, and name the ways that our lives are bearing fruit. To practice gratitude in real, tangible ways, not just in passing thoughts. Summer is also a season of opportunity. Just as the sun nurtures growth, abundance provides a platform to create, give, and invest in others. It's time to share what has been entrusted to you, whether it's time, or resources, or wisdom, or energy. The flourishing of summer is not just for us. It's meant to spill outward, to bless others, and expand the impact of what God has been growing in us. And in that sense, abundance is both joyful and purposeful. Summer's a reminder that seasons go in a cycle. We've already talked about winter and spring, and the fullness we experience now in the season of summer was shaped by the waiting of winter and the beginnings of spring. In the same way, the joy, clarity, and momentum we feel now will eventually need tending and attention to carry us into the next season. When we recognize this balance, celebration and stewardship, enjoyment and care, is at the heart of thriving in summer. It's a season to receive fully, act faithfully, and honor both the work and the gifts that have brought you here. Spiritually, summer is a season where what we've been nurturing begins to bear visible fruit. It's a reminder that God's work in our lives is both patient and purposeful. Galatians 6:9 captures this idea beautifully, where it says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." What we've sown in previous seasons, the small acts of faithfulness, the daily disciplines, the prayers, now has a way of showing up in tangible ways. This is a season of reward, not because we earned it, but because God is faithful. One of the lessons of abundance is that blessings are not just for our enjoyment. They're meant to be shared. Scripture reminds us that to whom much is given, much will be required. When summer arrives in our lives, it brings the opportunity to give back, to serve, and to multiply the good we've been entrusted with. Abundance invites responsibility to steward time, resources, relationships, and influence in ways that honor God and benefit others. And at the same time, summer challenges us to stay humble. This is one that's hard for so many of us. It can be easy to take abundance for granted or confuse the gift with personal achievement. Gratitude becomes an essential practice. Recognizing the fruit we enjoy is ultimately a reflection of God's faithfulness, keeps our hearts grounded and our perspective healthy. Psalm 107:8 encourages us when it says, "Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind." Spiritual abundance is inseparable from a posture of thankfulness. Well, summer also teaches discernment. Fruitfulness often brings opportunities, energy, and attention from many directions, and not every invitation or possibility aligns with what God intends for us. The spiritual practice of summer is learning to recognize which things to nurture and which to let go, even amid plenty. It's a season to evaluate where your energy is most fruitfully invested, balancing celebration with wisdom and generosity with boundaries. Another dimension of spiritual abundance is the deepening of joy. Unlike the fleeting happiness that comes from achievement alone, true joy in summer emerges from recognizing God's work in your life and in the lives of those around you. It's a satisfaction rooted in relationship, steeped in purpose and alignment rather than just circumstance. For when we celebrate this joy, it becomes a witness. It's a way for others to see God's faithfulness at work in real life. And summer reminds us that every season is temporary and part of the larger cycle. As I mentioned earlier about the importance of winter and spring, just as a tree eventually rests after a full summer, our lives will transition into seasons that call for reflection, release, maybe even recalibration. Recognizing the spiritual lessons of abundance now equips us to enter the next season with resilience and faith. Summer's a gift. It's a classroom. It's a garden, all wrapped into one, inviting us to thrive fully in what God has given us. And in that, summer's a season that invites attention and generosity. One of the first ways this shows up is gratitude. How important it is for us to take time to recognize the fruit in our lives, big and small. It could be personal achievements, healthy relationships, creative work coming to life, or just a day that feels right. Naming these blessings daily is not trivial. It's a spiritual practice that keeps our hearts rooted even when life is abundant. And let's talk about generosity for a minute. Generosity looks a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. And summer is the season when what we have can be shared without fear of running dry. It doesn't always look like giving money. It might be mentoring somebody. It might be offering your time or your energy or supporting a project that matters to you. Those are all ways to let abundance spill outward. Even small acts, a phone call, a kind note, a small act of service, those things can multiply the fruitfulness of the season. And abundance invites us to remember that life is never meant to be hoarded. It's designed to be shared. And abundance also shows up in balance and intentionality. Full seasons can be exhausting if we try to do everything at once or if we allow busyness to masquerade as productivity. Summer reminds us to prioritize what aligns with our purpose rather than saying yes to everything. It's a time to focus on the things that truly reflect God's work in our lives. Being selective isn't selfish, it's necessary for sustainable flourishing. Just like tending a garden, we water and nurture what's already growing rather than scattering energy everywhere. Celebrating wins and milestones is another practical expression of summer. Take time to acknowledge your progress, not in pride, but in recognition of God's faithfulness and your perseverance throughout previous seasons. A season of abundance is also a season of encouragement, both for you and for others. Invite friends, family, or colleagues to celebrate. Share your stories of growth. Let your joy inspire others to recognize the fruit in their own lives. Summer's a time to inhabit your successes fully and let gratitude expand. Another thing we should be learning in this season is discernment. Fruitfulness often attracts attention, but not all of them are aligned with God's plan. This is the season to exercise wisdom in choosing where to invest your energy, your creativity, and your resources. Because the most abundant gardens don't grow because every seed is planted randomly. They grow because the right seeds are nurtured intentionally. Sometimes that means saying no, even when there's a lot of you to give. Learning to say no as often as yes is part of thriving in this season. And we should never forget to realize summer invites reflection alongside action. Even in abundance, we are called to pause and assess how we are using what has been given. Journaling, conversation, prayer, those things can help ensure momentum we enjoy is being guided by purpose and gratitude. When we pair celebration with reflection, when we pair generosity with discernment and joy with being intentional, we move through summer not only with fullness, but with depth, building good habits and wisdom that will sustain us into the next seasons of life. You know, every season of abundance has a story beneath it. It didn't just arrive suddenly or without context. Seasons of abundance grow out of choices, faithfulness, and moments that may not have felt significant at the time. Summer invites us to look back gently, not to relive the struggles, but to recognize the journey that brought us here. There's meaning in tracing that path, in acknowledging the unseen work that has shaped what is now visible. And this is where our personal stories belong. A season of abundance might show up as clarity after confusion, momentum after stillness, or peace after a long period of uncertainty. It doesn't require sharing every detail to be real. Even naming the shape of the story, growth, joy, healing, can reveal how God has been at work in quiet and faithful ways. Abundance often carries fingerprints of past seasons if we take the time to notice them. And for all of us, this is an invitation to pause and reflect on our own lives. I want you to ask yourself where you see fruit right now. What feels fuller than it once did? Where do you sense stability, joy, or confidence that didn't exist before? These questions aren't meant to create pressure or comparison. They're meant to cultivate awareness. Sometimes abundance isn't loud. It's steady, grounding, and deeply personal. If you find yourself in a season of abundance, you're allowed to enjoy it. You don't have to explain it away or brace yourself for what might come next. There's grace in receiving what God has given without fear. Joy doesn't make you naive, and gratitude doesn't make you complacent. It simply makes you present. But don't forget in all of this how much this season invites generosity. Not from obligation, but from overflow. Because when life feels full, there's often space to encourage somebody else, to share your wisdom, to extend kindness, or to offer support without depletion. Abundance creates capacity, and that capacity can become a quiet blessing in somebody else's life. Wherever you are right now, let this be a moment of honesty and reflection. I want you to notice what's growing. I want you to give thanks for what's flourishing and allow yourself to rest in the truth that abundance, when received with humility and gratitude, has the power to deepen your faith, strengthen your purpose, and prepare your heart for whatever season lies ahead. Well, friends, as we begin to close this conversation today, I want you to remember this. Summer invites us not just to notice abundance, but to respond to it with intention. Abundance isn't only something to be enjoyed, it's to be shared and stewarded. And what we do with the full season matters. The habits we build now, the choices we make now, the posture we take now toward what we've been given will shape the seasons that follow. Here's a simple, accountable step to carry with you this week. I want to challenge you to choose one expression of abundance in your life and then intentionally invest in it. Not everything, just one. It might be a relationship you've neglected, or a creative project that finally has momentum, or something that brings you peace. Decide ahead of time how you will care for it. Just one thing. Write it down. Put it on your calendar. Give it attention on purpose, not just when it's convenient. The second part of that step is equally important. Name a boundary that protects that abundance. Abundant seasons can quietly erode if they're left unguarded. Ask yourself what threatens the fruit you're experiencing. Is it overcommitment? Is it distraction? Is it comparison or even exhaustion? Choosing what not to do is part of faithful stewardship. Protecting what is growing is just as holy as celebrating it. So as you move forward, hold abundance with open hands. Let gratitude anchor you. Let intention guide you. And let faith remind you that this season, like every other one, is both a gift and a responsibility. Because when abundance is received thoughtfully and cared for wisely, it becomes something that lasts, not just something that passes through. Well, friends, in the next episode, we're going to start talking about what happens when fullness starts to shift, when life asks us to prepare, release, and trust in new ways. Next time, we will shift into the season of autumn. Till then, stay present in what's been given, tend it well, and allow this season to do its good work in you. That's all for this week's Q on Q. As always, I really do appreciate you tuning in this week, and we'll see you back here next time, and we'll have more for you on Q.